What is up? It's Figure Hunter, and if you're new to the channel, I test devices for the purpose of CrossFit and high intensity interval training, for heavy training tracking as well as recovery tracking. And I actually also am 50 years old, so I am looking and wanting to add content for those 50 years and older, and trying to still maintain a high level of intensity with their workouts for their life. And what we're going to test and talk about today is the final review for the new Suunto Race S, the new smaller design, lower priced, fully featured watch from Suunto with the AMOLED display and 1.3-inch screen at only $349, which is a screaming deal. So we're going to talk about that in full, and we're going to compare it to its probably biggest competitor on the market, which is the Garmin Forerunner 265 and 965. So the first half of this video is going to be a review of the Race S standalone, and the second half is going to be a head-to-head comparison against the 265. And if you're going to see screenshots, it's going to be of the 965, which would be its big brother and would be also a competitor to the whole Race series and would apply to it. So with that, we're going to dive in to try to keep time and energy efficient. So we're going to look at the Race S in full form, looking at it from just the design and the basic features, what I liked and what I didn't like. We're going to look at it from the wellness side, from what I liked and what I didn't like, and then on the training and workout features for what I liked and what I didn't like. So looking at the design, things I liked, I love this watch. Like, I love the overall cut of it. I love the metallic feel. I love the overall shape and size. I love the band. I think the band is actually pretty awesome. The fact that it clips to itself, so you don't have like a flappy end. I love that the processor is faster than the previous Race initial. I love the button presses. They're solid. The rotating crown, all of those basic types things. I love that it has alerts, meaning, like, one thing that's great about it is it on battery life. So it is not the longest battery life of all time, but comparatively, I only have tested it with always on display and 45 minutes of GPS activities in the morning, and then a full hour workout. And the battery has been 3.5 to 4 days solid. But what I like is the alerts, because it'll tell you multiple times, like, if you're gonna work out today, you need to charge me. If you're gonna go to bed tonight, you need to charge me. And it all functions really well. Like, there's not a facet of it that falls short in the basic sense. The texts come in clearly. You get messages for all the right things. I like that they added new watch faces. I like the weather widget. I think the weather widget is pretty spot on, and that's another small thing. The font, I think the font is cool with sort of the skinny, taller font, and the morning report is actually a good step in the right direction. So what do I not like in general about it? I don't like the fact with this smaller version, and I say this at the outset for the Race S versus the original Race, the font for somebody that's 50 years old that uses reading glasses at 1.25 intensity, it just feels a little bit too small. So it feels a little bit too small to quite always make out what's on there. And I wish you could make some adjustments to that. Sometimes the weather would not be updated when I go in there. Like, you have to make sure that you've opened the app as well. And the morning report, although that's awesome and a lot of people appreciate that, and every company should do that, it doesn't have a pretty format. It's just like a whole bunch of information scrolling along on the screen. But the fact that it's there is better than a lot of others. So that's the general. And I would say generally about the app has a lot of useful information, but it could put the information in bigger, bolder, clearer display in some areas, which we'll talk about in the specific areas. So when it comes to the wellness, how do I feel about the wellness tracking on the Race S? On the pros, the things I like about it, I love that it has resources, which is an old, First Beat sort of Garmin body battery. It has that on there. It tracks your constant sort of the impact of the day, the impact of your stress on your overall projected internal reserves, which is a 24/7 physiological factor. And hey, there's not many that are doing 24/7 physiological factors in today's watch world. I like that it has the nightly HRV. That was the big addition with, I think, the vertical The nightly HRV displays it really well. I think that's a important, useful thing. I like that it tracks sleep. Probably the one thing that I actually most excited about with what it does well is it tracks your naps. I mean, I just love that it tracks your nap. It stacks your nap on top of your sleep time from last night and adds it together. This might seem simple, but a lot of devices don't do that. A lot of companies, they don't stack your nap on top of your sleep time to give you a total sleep time across the board. Maybe there's different scientific reasons for it, but the fact that it picks up my naps, I took a nap, you can see on the screen, and my Garmin, I don't even believe picked it up. Nope, no naps today. I don't know why. It was a 50-minute nap. Didn't move very much. But either way, so the Suunto Race S was better there, but I just mostly like that it packs it onto the sleep all around. What I don't like is I think that they've got to get more wellness metrics front and center, especially on the app, but even in the morning report, it gives you this long list. It should have a more condensed summary of information. For example, especially on the app, your resources is like this tiny little thing with a small little chart that you can't dive into. Your HRV has got a big summary page on one side, but it doesn't have quite enough in and of itself if you're looking at just the landing page. And the sleep has this little quality percentage, which I'm guessing is like a sleep score, and it's just a microscopic little piece of information. So that's the problem with the wellness, is that they're not presenting things clearly, fully, and in larger format on the app, especially because they're just little baby pieces of microscopic information, and they need to expand a little bit. They need to tie in like resting heart rate changes. They need to really give you a more complete sleep score, HRV, coupled with maybe some other physiological metrics so that you have more information and it's all not microscopically listed. So that's the wellness. And then the workouts and training. So at the outset of this, I'll say that I did a separate video on the heart rate accuracy when doing high intensity interval training or CrossFit or anything that involves higher intensity or anything that especially involves wrist flex. And it's definitely slightly better than the original race and the Suunto vertical, but still atrociously bad if you wanted to rely on it for any of the physiological analysis, because it can't keep up. With wrist flex, it cannot keep up with intensity unless you're just doing like running. And you know, most people today in exercise world are not just doing running. So that's just, it's unacceptable for a heart rate sensor. I test and track things for CrossFit, and in CrossFit you have like so much activity. I suggest you never rely on a wrist sensor. You always wear a chest strap or an armband for an external heart rate sensor to get accurate physiological analysis when it comes to your cardiovascular load, cardiovascular impact. So okay, sorry if the camera quality is going to be different. This has gone from my GoPro to my iPhone because my GoPro, because I have been horrendously behind in videos, is out of battery and did not last for one video. But that's my thought on the heart rate besides workout and training load tracking of the Suunto Race S. When you look at the pros, I love, well, minor thing, I love the picture that in fact it puts a CrossFit gym on there if you do say you're doing cross training or something like that. I think there's some great analysis that comes into the workout evaluation and the training load tracking, and those are huge components, I think, and then the coaching behind it. So in summary, I think it is one of the best on the market for training load tracking and coaching along with it, summary of the week analysis in general. In the specifics, it gives you, at the end of every workout, it gives you a training stress score. It gives you an EPOC, so post-oxygen consumption, exercise post-oxygen consumption, and a PTE, which is a training effect, like Garmin does, the aerobic training effect. And my con, one thing I'll mention is that the con is that it's all these little tiny pieces of information, microscopic again, like we heard in the wellness side. But the training effect is spot on with most of Garmin's training effect. as long as you have a chest strap connected to both and they're using the same heart rate analysis. So that little baby number they give you, the PTE, is the same thing as Garmin's aerobic training effect. So you're getting the same quality of analysis. And then they're adding to it their own load evaluation for that particular workout called the training stress score. And the epoch evaluation is just sort of a sideline feature, but it's hard to tell what that value is. But it's giving you a load score and it's giving you an aerobic training effect score. So those I love. I love looking at the workout to see what the training effect was, the PTE, which is the aerobic impact of that workout on a scale of 0 to 5, because I feel like that gives you a strong and solid gauge for how much progress you might have had or impact you might have had on your aerobic training level. Those are huge. Those are huge things. It gives you recovery time. We'll talk about that in the negatives in a second. And then on the training load tracking and analysis, it has a confusing, like if you look at the elements of the chart, it's confusing to digest some of the pieces of information, but I love that it's got a fitness line. Which is really your long-term training load, like how much your body can handle load. But it just calls it fitness, so you got a score for your fitness. I love that because you can evaluate, like, what's my fitness score? What's my fitness level? That helps a lot. If you know your fitness level has come down, it's just a simple, quantifiable number that you can just like put a handle on to evaluate your rigor recently versus your rigor over a longer period of time. And so that's really helpful. And then the coaching page in the app is just really good. I mean, it's really good. It goes into a bunch of different pieces. It's all sort of clear and easy to understand. Some of it might be a little bit simple, might be a little bit just like one-dimensional, but it's definitely the best broad coaching from a device that I've seen by far. Like, I don't think anybody's even competing like quite this level. And so really, really good stuff, coupled with what I feel like is one of the best training load tracking generally on the market. So what's the negative with these things? The negative is it gives you a recovery time that's always pathetically wrong, in my opinion. So you could be pushing your aerobic training effect at like a 3.3, I got a couple of times, and my recovery time would be like 14 hours. That's stupid. That's just stupid. It doesn't make any sense. If you like pushed your fitness above 2.5, above 3, which is you're pushing your fitness forward, your body somewhat intuitively needs more than 14 hours to recover, or 11. And so a simple rule of thumb would be you double whatever the number they give, but then that doesn't feel right either, because it's sort of like, is that the way you do it? Do you double it? So the recovery time just needs to get better. They just need to fix that. It's awesome that they have recovery time. I think that's a useful metric they could amplify. It's just got to be right. And then on top of it, they've got to fix the fact that their training effect is just this microscopic little number, and they need to put like a chart with it or some sort of visual evaluation, because that is a score for the rigor of the workout. That is a useful piece of information. Even maybe the training stress score. They need to put that in some sort of visual display like Garmin does with their aerobic and anaerobic training effect. So they could make it so good if they said, look at this information, instead of look at this like minor fractional stat amongst a sea of minor fractional stats, because that particular stat, PTE, is a really useful one, and they could make it helpful to the user. Minor negative is that you can't customize the data pages as easily, and you can't control some of those things. That's a little bit annoying, but those are the main things. So that concludes, and I think in summary, when I look at the Suunto Race S, I love it and want to love it. Coming from Garmin, we'll talk about the differences there, or we'll just talk about them now. I'll give my summary thoughts on the Suunto Race S at the end. So the Garmin 265, 965, what do I like better? And what does Garmin do better? Not looking at the sea of like direct head-to-head comparison, but what is Garmin just doing better? You're gonna see pictures of the 965 because that's all I have. And think in your mind, 265 is just a little bit smaller. So the things I like that are better is and I'll go from like less important to more important. The data fields. So the data fields are fully editable. That's on Garmin, that's much better. The sensor support, if you were a cyclist and you connected to like power meters or foot pedals or whatever, I know that Garmin has better sensor support than anybody in the universe. I do like some of the little charts, little pieces of information like the acute load chart and the load ratio that Garmin is doing now. If you look simply at sport profiles, they might have the same laundry list, length, number of sport profiles. Like if you want to say you're doing, you know, paddleboarding or rowing or kayaking, but Garmin's are very specific to the sport, and Garmin's the only one in the industry that does that. So if you're a big paddleboarder, you can get your strokes per minute, and if you used paddleboarding on Suunto or some other device, it's going to give you your heart rate and calories. So heart rate sensor is obviously better. That's another thing, is actually kind of a bigger thing of the difference. The heart rate sensor out of the box, although I don't recommend anybody use an optical heart rate sensor, and Garmin's heart rate sensor on the 265 and 965 is not their superior heart rate sensor. So it's not the best in class. It's like, it is better for sure, but not the best in class. And then watch faces, the customization you can do on a Garmin, the essential things. What are the big things that Garmin does better? Let's just get to the meat and potatoes. Body battery. The body battery with Garmin is scientifically really fantastic. Their sleep score is at least more comprehensive, looking at multiple elements when it comes to evaluating your sleep. So they're giving you some analysis, not just information they think is right about what stage you were in. The recovery time from Garmin is next level because it takes into account the quality of your sleep. It takes into account, you know, bad night's sleep, takes into account your body battery, other factors, in addition to the hard rigor of the workout you had. The aerobic and anaerobic training effect, the fact that they're looking at both of them, and they put them in a big, pretty format, which helps you to evaluate how you can evaluate your workout. The morning report is much more well done, more clear in information. Font sizes are adjustable, which is actually a big deal. And the better app, better use of information to me, and that's subjective because a lot of people don't like the Garmin app, but to me it's better use of information. So what's worse? So you think about all that, $265, $450. Oh yeah, it's got music. You can actually use music. That's actually a big, it's a thing if you were a runner and didn't want to take your phone. So you think about all those things. The Suunto does a lot of things really well. Garmin just happens to do it better. But what's the negative? To me, the first negative, and it might seem like a small thing, but it's something you live with every day, is that the Garmin watches are plasticky at that price point. So the 265 and 965 both feel plasticky. 965 has a bigger screen, but they both feel just not solid. Like the Suunto Race S, the Suunto Race Original, they're metal, they're like strong. You can get a titanium variant. And so it feels like a much higher class watch versus the 265, 965, which feels plasticky, like a cheaper watch. And they both have domed watch glass, so it feels more delicate, feels less rugged, and to me, feels softer, which I don't really love. So that's probably a big thing. On Garmin, in some of their things that I mentioned is a positive, like their load chart, their acute load chart, and their load ratio, those informations are buried. And so that gets to the point of what Garmin does poorly. It's too much information where some of the useful information is buried. And then on the wellness analysis, they just throw too many numbers at you. So I think Suunto needs to step it up with a little bit more compiled, a little bit more compiled wellness advice. And Garmin needs to step it down with too many like features and, you know, the readiness aspects. And I just think a lot of that just makes it a little bit overwhelming to know what to think about your night's sleep. And then the training load tracking for Garmin, I feel like is inferior to Suunto. Suunto's got the best training load and the best coaching from your training load. So Suunto's doing that element really well. So in simple terms, if I was gonna compare them head to head in summary, I would say Garmin definitely has Suunto beat, but it's also not a direct defeat. There's nuances to it. So you can get much more information with Garmin. You have much more customization. More sport profiles will give you useful information for the sports that you may have an interest in doing, and you can dive into much more science and analytics from the Garmin watch with customization, like ability to adjust the watch experience itself. But with Suunto, you really can just focus on your training and the training coaching and training analysis and training load, and like load analysis itself, and go with that. That gives you the backbone, and you can use their sort of more simplified wellness to get a feature. Like the fact that they have resources makes them at least competitive a little bit, because the HRV alone is not enough, but you have resources. So you have two primary elements, and they've stepped up their game on some of the watch. But the fact that it works in a lot of levels. So in summary, when I look at the Race S, so that's my sort of thought head to head with Garmin. When in summary, I look at the Race S, I want to love it. I mean, it's $350 for a full tilt watch with a lot of strength, a lot of quality feel, and a lot of worthwhile analytics. Will it bump the Garmin watch off my wrist? Well, I'm gonna do a future video where I test the Race, full-size Race, as well as the small Race, and really take the Garmin off for a period of time and tell you what I think then. But by itself, it is a great and relatively complete package at an incredible price point for high quality solutions that I do think that most people on the market can't compete with. It is, other than Garmin 265, which would do things basically better, the Race S is the next best competitor at the price point for the quality point on the entire market. So that's my summary of the Suunto Race S, as well as compared to the Garmin 265 and 965. It's a Figure Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.